Good evening, my dear viewers, and welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and today we've got another van life deck profile. Once again for Star Wars Unlimited, coming straight at you from the Planet Fitness parking lot. We got Captain Rex, baby. Double green, no less. Now before I get into it, let me say, it's been a little minute since our last Star Wars Unlimited video. I have had a crazy last couple months. For those of you who don't know, I do work for a trading card game called Universus, and I do mostly event management and convention appearances, and I've just been traveling nonstop on top of Christmas and New Year's and spending holidays with some of my old friends. Oh my goodness, I have not stopped moving. So because of all the traveling, I haven't exactly been on the tournament grind lately. I had to miss like all 3 PQs in my area because of events lining up for work. And as unfortunate as all of that was, it does mean that I've gotten to play a lot of casual games lately and focus on some fun decks, which enter double green Captain Rex. So without further ado, let's get into this deck and see just how well this man can fight for his brothers. All right, so Captain Rex is a command heroism leader, and on his leader side here, he's got a pretty nifty ability. You can pay 2 and exhaust him, and if a friendly unit has attacked this phase, you get to make a clone trooper token, which is just a little 2/2 feller. You're not gonna use it very much in the early game because you kinda wanna play really good units on curve most of the time. This ability is not revolutionary, but it is pretty helpful, especially when things get a little bit grindy, which this deck is surprisingly good at doing. And then when you control 5 or more resources, you can flip Rex as a 2/6 leader. And when you do flip him, you get to spawn out another clone trooper token just for free, which is pretty nice. His 2/6 stat line is pretty mediocre. We're a couple points shy of what we want our good 5-cost leaders to be, but he does come with 2/2 of stats in the clone, and he's gonna give all of your other troopers 1 health, which is kind of like a 2/3 clone. So in reality, you're getting like 8 stats from him and then 5 from the clone, which is way above rate. Now, of course, that's split across 2 bodies, both of which are 2 power, so like it doesn't exactly pan out that way, but it's not awful. I think the general consensus on Captain Rex is that he is not the worst leader in the world, but he's definitely pretty mediocre, especially when you compare him to some of the top dogs, and I feel like we just don't like talking about it because Rex is such an awesome character. But I, like many others, am a huge Clone Wars stan, and that's not going to deter me from playing the boy here. And then for the base, we're going to be pairing up with double green for Energy Conversion Lab, and honestly, if this base didn't exist, I don't know if we'd even be on double green. Energy Conversion Lab with Ayla Sakura, spoiler alert, is kind of the strongest thing that this deck can do. And while this isn't like a very coordinate-heavy deck, we do have a few effects here and there that rely on us going pretty wide, and Rex just really helps with that, and it makes a pretty fun little package all around. Shoving Rex in our base aside, let's get into the deck itself. First off is the True Drops. We are playing 3 copies of Battlefield Marine. I mean, Battlefield Marine is just an amazing 2-cost 3/3, very above rate, but also he's a trooper, which means that if one of these guys is hanging around when Rex comes out, this guy turns into a 3/4, which is pretty sick. Other than that, there's not much to say about Battlefield Marine. It's just one of the best stat lines you can find. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Echo. So Echo, on the other hand, is a puny little 2-cost 2/2. However, once Coordinate, 3 or more units comes online, this guy's a 4/4, and this gets out of hand really quickly. You flip Rex, he becomes a 4/5. You keep that Coordinate online, this guy gets really beefy and kind of becomes a problem. Your opponent, like, they can do dances to kind of like damage him for 2, kick off the Coordinate by killing your other guy, then he dies. Like, if they spread like a really good overwhelming barrage around it, you know, he's not awful to get rid of, but he can sometimes pull way more weight than any 2-drop should. you can't underestimate a 4/4 stat line on something that easy. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Gamorrean Retainer. When you have another green unit, this guy just becomes a Sentinel. The other 2 drops we play are kinda just whatever. If this guy was like a trooper or something, that'd be way more impressive, but even still, a 3/2, an emergency Sentinel that we can drop, you know, like the whole deck's green, right? So we're gonna be able to find the condition for this guy quite easily, and so he's handy. And then our last 2-drop is going to be the Coruscant Guard, and this guy just has Coordinate Ambush. And this is pretty important. We're going to get into this subject right now and why Ambush is very crucial for this deck, because when you play double green Heroism, you just don't have removal. You just don't have it. The solely green removal is stuff like Strike True, and like your deck is just full of weenies, so that doesn't really work. You know, double green heroism basically just doesn't get away with playing into removal. The only reason that double green villainy gets to get away with it is because they have Barrage, and typically the double green villainy deck is Palpatine, and he kind of comes with like a free you know, removal on their biggest thing once per game, which is, it's even better. He steals it. Double green hero though, not so great a world for a double green hero. So we kind of have to play a lot of ambush just to circumvent that, because that's essentially how we find our removal spell. This guy is a trooper though, so if you have Rex out, he becomes a 3/3, which is kind of nice. Then he can start ambushing like some 2/3s and survive, and that is kind of slick when that happens. Going into our 3 drops, we're playing 2 copies of Echo-based Defender. Again, just good green hero rebel dudes, but again, also a trooper. So Rex makes this guy 4/4 Sentinel, which for 3 is obviously very, 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 very good. And then we have some more troopers here. We got 2 copies of Sundari Peacekeeper. It's a 1/5, but he has Raid 2 and Restore 2. This guy swings for 3. It's not too terrible. Once you get a trooper, he becomes a 6 health guy when Rex is out, and that's really, really annoying to remove. Like, they kind of have to remove Rex first, and they have to spend 6 damage doing that somehow. Then they can go deal with this guy. It's just nice. Also, a little bit of Restore is going to go a long way. Next up, we got 2 copies of Admiral Akbar. I always joke that this is low-key the best card in the deck. When Akbar hits the board, he's not very impressive on his own, but his wind plate is going to let you blast something in an arena for every unit you control there. So obviously, when you're going really wide in this deck, you're making tons of little clones, you're playing all these little weenies. Akbar is really sweet, and he's actually kind of the way that you deal with like really good like 5 or 6 health guys. Again, your removal is not premium in this deck. Having something like Akbar is really, really good, and it's not uncommon to get him to blast 4 that much, and that just really, really, really carries you just in kind of getting rid of those problematic things mid-game, while also still developing your board in a meaningful way. Going into our 4 drops on ground, we've got 3 copies of Shakti. I really like Shakti. She's a 3/4 for 4, but she gives all your tokens 1 power, and when she attacks, she makes a clone trooper token. So she's kind of an okay like early game ECL target. Like, if you've already got like an Echo or something on the board, you want to get Coordinate online, ECL in her to instantly make a clone. If she could kill something and survive, she might get to swing next turn too, unless they Tarkin Town her if they have, you know, a not already Tarkin Towned. Shakti's just pretty dope. You know, she's really, really good value. And then like, if you can just kind of drop her like late game out of nowhere when you got a bunch of tokens on the board, she can be a surprisingly effective damage pump out of nowhere. Next up on the ground, we have 2 copies of Escort Skiff. This is just a 4/4 that gets ambush if you've got another green unit. This is totally fine. Again, it's more ambush. 4/4 is a really good rate. Our entire deck is green. We don't even have any like purely heroism units. The whole deck is green. So as long as the only thing on your board isn't like a clone trooper token, this guy's gonna ambush 24/7, and that is very, very nice. Being able to kind of like curve up with these ambushes into like the ECL on the 5 turn is really good. Speaking of the ECL on the 5 turn, we have the workhorse of the deck, which is triple Ayla Sakura. Ayla Sakura is a 6/5 that has Coordinate when she attacks. She just does not take any damage back. Ayla Sakura is awesome. She's pretty much the reason we're on double green Rex. It's like the coolest trick that our deck gets to do here, because even if you have a completely empty board going into the 5 resource turn, you can deploy Rex, get a clone trooper token, and then if you ECL Ayla, you have Coordinate right there with those 3. So you can really, really, really make something out of nothing. And if your opponent doesn't have like some kind of blue removal to take care of her after, she can be really, really troublesome for a lot of decks. Like, if Ayla gets to swing, kill something, and then kill something for free again next turn, it's really good. Those are the games that you can usually kind of sneak out playing this deck. Then we have our backup Ayla Sakura, and this is just Steadfast Battalion at 3 copies. Notably, is a trooper. So we're a 5/6, and when you attack, if you got a leader on the board, give something +2/+2 between the Overwhelm and then an ambush from ECL. You know, this is just kind of like an age-old trick right here. Yes, it's true, our very cool Rex deck is actually just a flip our leader on 5 and ECL Steadfast deck in disguise, but look, man, they gave my boy 2 power. We got to figure out something to do here. We got to figure something to do here. I said this is like our backup Ayla Sakura. Sometimes if you're in a matchup where like your opponent has like also a flip on 5, 6 or 7 health leader, I mean, if it's a 7 health leader, you'd rather keep this in your hand. If it's a 6 health leader, you'd rather just Ayla Sakura it. Our last 5 drop is 1 single Commander Cody. This guy kind of stinks, but sometimes sometimes he wins the game, baby. He's a 5-cost 4/4, which is just an atrocious stat line, but he does have Overwhelm, and he has Coordinate. All of your guys get 1/1 and Overwhelm. He's mostly in here as like an emergency thing we can play late game to suddenly put a bunch of damage out of nowhere. Alternatively, if you've just really been commanding the first few turns from your opponent, and they don't have like, you know, they're just not controlling your board very well by the 5 resource turn, maybe they're a much more of a late game focused deck, slamming this guy is just fine. Even if you just get a couple damage out of him and then he eats like, you know, a takedown or whatever, that's pretty chill. It just feels very bad when he gets open fired. But he is like a really good emergency card. We play U-Wings, of course, in this deck too. So U-Winging into him for like a surprise damage pump, sort of like a Vader grabbing a Veers back in set 1 or something like that. It's kind of nice. Also, we got the super slick Commander Cody mat. Shout out to my boy Steve from Locals for hooking me up with this mat. So we got to play at least one Cody in honor of the super duper sick Destiny mat. Also, shout out to Michael Baird from Locals for hooking me up with the Showcase Rex. This deck really is just like all the boys coming together, which is very very fitting, honestly. Now getting into our space units, we're playing 3 copies of the Republic Arc 170. This is just a 3-cost 3/4 ship. We don't really have, as you can see, none of our 2-drops go to space. We at least need a 3-drop that goes to space and starts to protect us. This thing can kill usually 2 little ships before it dies, so it just kind of helps keep us alive there. I don't think you can get away with just not playing any space units. And in the same vein, we're rocking 3 copies of Bright Hope. Bright Hope's freaking awesome, man. This is just a 2/6 Sentinel ship, and when played, you can bounce one of your ground units to your hand to draw a card. This is pretty good value. One of my favorite things to do is like when you hit the late game, beat it like an Akbar that's just stuck around because he's barely worth killing, bouncing it with Bright Hope, getting that draw, being able to replay Akbar and get a ton more damage out is really awesome. You can also bounce things like your Coruscant guards if they ambush and survive, or if you just played them like vanilla, did an ambush and he's just hanging around, you can try again with the ambush. You can bounce the Escort's Gift for the same thing. It's just kind of good, but really, like, it's all about the Space Sentinel with 6 health. Again, you gotta find a way to survive against those space heavy decks. And then our last spaceship here is just a single copy of Home 1. This deck does want to grind a little bit, and Home 1 is just a beastly card. That 7/7 with Restore 2 gives everything else Restore 1 and plays a Heroism guy from discard pile for 3 less. Obviously, your 3-drops are awesome with that. You can grab an emergency Sentinel with Echo-based Defender. You can grab an emergency Akbar and just surprise nuke something out of nowhere, and that's sweet. Or if you're on like a 9-resource turn, you can start reviving Bright Hopes, and that's really cool. It's just a very good card, and you don't really want to leave home without at least 1 copy going into those grinding matchups. Now let's get into our events here, and amusingly enough, this is where you're going to see the first double green card. I told you, we really just want the base. But that's 3 copies of Manufactured Soldiers, which we also really want. This card's awesome. Being able to pay 3 for 2 Clone Trooper tokens or pay 3 for 3 Battle Droid tokens is really good. Obviously, when you're on the flip turn with Rex, being able to grab essentially 2 2/3s with this is just super duper premium, man. This turns on Akbar really well as well. Sometimes you do go for the battle droids. They are still troopers, mind you, so they are going to be 1/2s with Rex. Not that that's particularly relevant. I mean, it kind of saves them from like single pings, which is nice, but sometimes you just want to go a little wider because you want to set up like an Akbar play or something like that. In tandem with Shakti, this is really good too. Like this on 3 to make 2 clones. Next turn, drop a Shakti. If she doesn't just immediately die, you get some nice value out of there. They start swinging for 3, and it's good. Next up, our other double green card. We have 3 copies of Command. Command is sweet. This is just our double color event. The 4 modes on this are all okay. None of them are insane, but you're going to kind of use them all in certain situations. Our main use of this card is really we want to just jam it on 4, ramp up, and then put 2 tokens on something impactful that we've played either on 2 or 3 if it's stuck around, flip Rex right away, and then just kind of try to start getting them from there. However, once you kind of get into the mid game, there's a lot of worlds where you're going to want to like give 2 tokens to something and then deal the power, you know, if there's something non-unique worth killing. Sometimes you also do things like recycling Akbars or something like that too. Those are, like, again, these are not awful plays. Really late game, you can start recycling some of like your big ships like Home 1 or just your Bright Hopes. It's just kind of a pretty versatile card. Not nearly as explosive as any of the other double color events, but you know, we're in double green and it is a good card nonetheless, so we might as well play it. Next up, the cute events. The cute events. We're playing 2 in defense of Kino. This is a 4-cost event that says all of your Republic units gain Restore 2, and if they die, make a Clone Trooper token. This card is kind of in here for a few reasons. First of all, this card is how we beat aggro. While the whole deck is not Republic, if you even get this off on like 2, maybe 3 units, if you get like a heal 4 or a heal 6 out of this, this is not bad, especially if you're gonna go send your guys to trade into theirs. Get the restore off, your guys die, you clear the board, they all turn into clone trooper tokens. This card's also not bad into like control matchups either. I mean, especially if you can do something like claiming going into the 8 resource turn, you expect a super laser blast coming onto your wide board, instantly just casting this and now saying you can nuke me, but I'll get all these clones is pretty sweet. If it goes into like a Snoke, that's not so great because like your guys will die, the clones will come in and they'll just die again unless like Rex or something is out. But again, it's just, it's versatile, it's nice, and kind of just shores up those matchups a lot more than you would think. I kind of thought this was a meme card at first, but I wanted to play it because the art is sick, but I've been reasonably impressed by it. Speaking of impressive events, yes, of course, there's 3 U-Wing reinforcements in this deck. This card's insane. Fish the top 10 cards of your deck for up to 3 units with combined cost 7 or less. Wowza. So you're gonna notice that there's no 7s in this deck. You know, we're not going out here grabbing like Luke's or Han units or a lot of the more popular U-Wing targets because we kind of just don't have any plain double green, but it's okay. We're here to go wide all day, and that means there's awesome stuff we can do with this. First of all, being able to grab any of your ambushers with this is really awesome. The fact that you can grab like an escort skiff and a Coruscant guard is pretty sweet, or you can go for like a 3, a 2, and a 2. You can go for like 2, 2, and then an Akbar at the end for like a big damage pop. You can grab emergency sentinels with Bright Hope and Echo Base Defender. You can even grab both of those at the same time, which is pretty slick. You can grab a Cody or a Shakti out of nowhere, surprise damage pump. Just really, really good. U-Wing just kind of keeps you in the game and keeps a lot of your stuff flowing. You're also going to notice that it kind of affects our deck build a little because we don't have any 6-drops in this deck. I'll talk about that a little later, but since we're not playing 1-drops, 6-drops are a little awkward for U-Wing. That's not the only reason we don't play them, but it does factor into that thought process, which again, we'll get into once we finish the last card in this deck. And then speaking of the last card, it's just 2 copies of Choose Sides. This says that you basically just get to take one of your little guys and swap it for one of their not so little guys. It's good. It's a necessary evil in this deck. It's not the greatest card in the galaxy, but again, we have like no way to get rid of really, really big stuff because we're playing double green hero. So it's kind of just a necessary evil that we have to play something like this. Granted, it does play quite well into our deck because again, we're making all these little clones, sometimes all these little droids, and then we can just trade them for, you know, the things we can't rid of, right? They're Luke, they're Snoke. It's just really, really nice, and it's kind of the only way you can play in that game state once things get big. And that's gonna be it for this main deck, guys. I don't have a sideboard here because I haven't really been playing this deck competitively. However, I don't know if I would play anything particularly new in a sideboard. I would probably just put in things like maybe more Choose Sides and home ones for the grindier matchups, or for the aggro matchups, maybe more in defensive Kaminos, maybe lower my curve a little and bring in some like more echo-based defenders and some Dari Peacekeepers, you know, your really good early game survival units. But you know, there's not really an insane amount of sideboard options that I think off the top of my head for this deck. Next up, I do want to talk a little bit about cards that were in consideration but ultimately didn't make the cut. I always talk about how kind of like unimpressive the second half of your 2-drops are in this deck. I do think there's some solid alternatives. We are in double green. I was trying out Masameda for a while, and he was nice. Like, he kind of like guaranteed that you were able to find like a good ECL target by the 5 resource turn. But man, this is not a super duper like grind forever deck. Sacrificing any power on your 2-drop is really, really rough. It's not really what you want to be doing in a deck like this. You do have to kill them at some point. You're not going to survive Avenger Super Laser loops. And then I also really liked the Ryloth Militia just as like a 2-3 with Raid 1. It's like a budget 3-3, but it's also a trooper, so it becomes, you know, sort of like a 3-4, a lot like the Battlefield Marine does. I think I wouldn't cut the Coruscant Guard for this because I do like that this is Republic and the ambush is nice, but I think you could totally play this over the Gamorrean Retainer if you wanted. Next, going into some alternative 3-drops, man, I thought Admiral Yularen was gonna be like the best card in this deck until I realized that like half my 2-drops don't have heroism. My other ambusher, all of my ambushers don't have heroism. Steadfast and Cody don't have heroism. My Arc 1 too much of the deck just didn't have heroism, where I was like, oh, I don't think this card is actually that fantastic in here. I would rather just play some Dari Peacekeepers, who are gonna get a natural health buff of 1 from Rex, rather than playing something like this guy. I also really like the 501st Liberators. These guys are pretty cool. I think if I could afford to play more Republic in this deck, I'd feel a little bit better about this card. Like, there's just going to be times where, like, against aggro, where they're just swinging face, you want to jam this on turn 2, but literally half your 2-drops aren't Republic, and that's kind of the best time to play this card, and so it's just a little too awkward for my taste. Now I want to talk about 6-drops a little, because like I said, we aren't playing them. 1, because they're just kind of okay, and 2, because they don't really go well with U-Wing, because again, there's no 1-drops in this deck. I think 1-drops in this deck are a little awkward, like the sheer concept of like, oh, well, I can play a 1-drop because on turn 2, I'm going to swing with my 2-drop I played, play a 1-drop, then use Rex to, make a clone, and that's how I'll spend my 3. And that's like really cool when they, don't just kill your 2-drop before it can attack. Also, you'd kind of rather play any of your impactful 3-drops. You really want manufactured soldiers on turn 2 every time, but like Peacekeeper and Echo-based Defender are so much better than like a line like that. I just don't really like the 1-drop game plan here, which does kind of go in line with the 6-drops. But I think if you were to play any 6-drops in this deck, I think Captain Rex and General Recon are both solid. Captain Rex is kind of just like good to drop late game when you need to go wide again, force out like some more removal. It's not terrible, especially if you can get like a Shock T on the board or something next turn. But Recon though, Recon is a beast, especially with ECL, because you can trigger his effect twice immediately and either give like a Bright Hope or an Echo-based Defender 2 tokens, or you can give himself a token after making himself a Sentinel, being a 6/8. He's really, really good. The main thing is, in a deck like this, like, you really just want to ECL Ayla or Steadfast every time, or do some kind of early game play with like a Shock T or a Sundari Peacekeeper. You're just generally not going to have your Energy Conversion Lab by the 6 resource turn. And I think Recon is very okay without the lab, but I don't know if it's better than anything currently in the deck. Then kind of just a couple cute cards. I think Synchronized Strike is like almost solid removal in this deck, but honestly, if I even had the space for something like that, I would probably just play more Akbars, because it's kind of the same thing. And then finally, my pet card that never made it in is Inspiring Mentor. I think this card could be like so cute with Rex, just because like he comes with a body, so like you deploy him, you get the clone, you can attack, even if they've killed all your other stuff. You can attack for, become a 3/7, become like a well-statted 5-cost leader, and then you can start giving the tokens right away to that clone. You instantly make him a 3/4. I think that is like really cute. I just don't know where I would put it in this deck. I think you'd have to sacrifice one of the events, maybe something like the defensive Kino or the choose sides, and I'm just not sure that's worth it, but I feel like there's maybe some kawaii things to be done there. And that, my dear viewers, wraps up this deck profile. This is, again, not the most competitive deck in the world, but holy cow, it's really, really fun to play. It is so fun to just like send in your armies of your little clones and anthem them all up with like things like Shock T and Cody, get some big Akbars off, make a ton of value plays, steal Snokes and Lukes and give them a clone trooper. It's just really, really fun, and really, really, really feels like you're playing Clone Wars, which is kind of all I wanted to do with something like this. The inner child in me, unbelievably pleased with this double green Rex deck. As far as fun deck profiles go, I might have a couple more in the pipeline before I start getting all on the road again. I've got a really, really cute Nalase deck that just plays like 5s and Echo and a fun little clone engine. I've got a red Newt Gunray deck that's just trying to like spam the Malevolence as fast as it possibly can. I've got a bunch of cute stuff I've been working on just because I have been playing so much like local and kitchen table Star Wars Unlimited lately, and I've just been having an absolute blast. So maybe look forward to some more profiles of those in the very, very near future. Thanks so much for making it to the end of this video. I appreciate you watching, and if you want to see more stuff coming soon, make sure to subscribe, because I do, holy cow, do I love playing this game, and holy cow, do I love making content for it. Until then though, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.